And I would like to start with just a welcoming of Keani Rawlins, Fernandez. It's wonderful to have you here with us, Keani. So if you can unmute and we can start our interview process with you then.
Aloha Paul, Daniel, Sylvia, Tommy, and I see Bruce's name, but I don't see his video, so maybe he's not on?
Bruce is not on. He's not on for today.
Okay.
But again, I just want to again thank you for being part of this interview process, and also for listening to and commenting on the many interviews that we've done thus far. So again, I appreciate your involvement. The first question I have, Keani,
Before you ask the question, can I just thank you all for this work, for your commitment to transparency, and for making sure that our community has an opportunity to hear directly from all of the candidates. It's a really important role that you're doing, and I just really want to commend you and thank you. I have so much gratitude for all this work that you're doing. Mahalo. Okay, first question, sorry.
Thank you for that, Keani, appreciate it. You've really had an opportunity to get your feet wet big time, especially with taking on really our overall finances and looking at then how the county operates on so many levels. I guess the first question I have is, how is it for you on a personal level to make this huge transition from living in Molokai to all of a sudden being so immersed in these county initiatives that we have?
Mahalo, Paul, for your first question. I've never heard that question asked before. And I wanted to also just say aloha to Maui nui a kama, Molokai nui a hina, lanai o ka ulu la'au, kohema lama lama o Kanaloa, and to all the members of the Maui Pono Network. Mahalo again for this opportunity to come before you. So to answer your question, I am loving what I'm doing. I love my job. This transition from Molokai to Maui County Council was more than just coming from Molokai. I did graduate from Molokai High. And in 2015, I graduated with my law degree. And while in law school, I did work as a session staff or session intern at the state legislature for now Senator Keoha Kalole, and also worked remotely for former Councilmember Eli Cochran, and completed my master's in business administration in 2016. So I've been preparing for this work for a long time, and having this opportunity now to serve the community in this capacity has been such an honor and a pleasure. I'm sorry, Paul, you're muted.
I thought I just clicked my unmute. Here we go. So my other question that I have has to do with the lifeblood, really, of our INA, our water supply, and especially some of the issues that we're facing right now in terms of its access and distribution. So would you support the county asserting eminent domain over the EMI system in order to administer to the public trust water resources for food security necessary for our community?
Okay. Mahalo for that question, Paul. Absolutely. And so I'm going to attempt to share it on Facebook, but I'm sharing it in the chat, I guess. So the Board of Water Supply completed or conducted a temporary investigative group last year and completed their report in October. And their recommendation was to purchase the East Maui irrigation system. And they did a very thorough analysis. It's 87 pages long. And their recommendations are for the county to do a thorough legal analysis of the current ownership needs, EMI and the Hawaiian government, the East Maui irrigation system should have reverted back to the Hawaiian Kingdom government at that time. They also did an analysis on how much the cost to the county would be, and they projected about $5 million. And the maintenance, because maintenance is a really important question on whether the county would be able to afford the maintenance. And so I really commend the TIG committee, or the TIG, and the Board of Water Supply for transmitting this report. So in their report, they estimate that it could be self-sustaining by having a proposed water rate, and it would generate about $26 million annually. And the cost to operating, so the annual operating costs would be 2.5 million, improvements 3 million, annual watershed monitoring 6 million. Oh, mahalo. And debt service of 1 million annually, for a total estimated annual expense of 12.5 million. And that would include 15,000 acres of land, parcels, ditches utilized. And so where I'm reading off of is closer to page 70. And you'll be able to see, or if you're just showing the report itself. And so the total purchase price plus the substantial improvements was $17.4 million. And as a public infrastructure, the county would have access to bond, so that we would be able to finance it through bonding. Mahalo.
Is this something that is very feasible for the near future?
Yes.
That we could issue a bond then to look at? Oh, this is good news. Okay, thank you for that, Keani. And with that response, then Sylvia, you want to go next, and then Tommy, and then Daniel.
Aloha, Keani. Thank you for coming. I'm hearing a lot about transitioning towards more agriculture, being less reliant on tourism, having more food security. There's a lot in the way of people being able to farm for a living on Maui, such as the accessibility of farmland. The land is so expensive that if you want to farm, you have to have some other business. How can we make farmland more accessible?
Mahalo. Aloha, Sylvia. Mahalo for your question. So I think there are several efforts right now happening. And so one way is to, obviously work with Mahipono. I know that they've made some land available for the community to be able to farm enough of a parcel that they can handle, especially if they're kind of just starting out. We have the Hula Ag Park, and we can look at that as a model for other places as well, so that we can help farmers who are, just up and coming. And as they need more land, then we can work together on getting more land, because a high priority for our county is food security. And with this pandemic right now, it's really highlighted the fact that we are underscored the need for us to immediately move in that direction. And so land is one barrier, capital is another. And that's one of the things that the council voted unanimously to support this year in the budget, is for $2.5 million in microgrants to all the farmers, so that they would get capital up front. And that was something that was really important, that I worked with the community to make sure that what we have right now under the Office of Economic Development is a reimbursement policy. And so in order to receive grants from the county, you first need to spend the money and then you get reimbursed. That's really problematic, especially for our farmers. And so we're working really hard to change that policy and to make sure that farmers will have access to that capital upfront at the front end. So that, because if they had the capital to spend, then they would spend it. So for us to really support farmers, that's another way that we're looking at supporting them.
Thank you for your answer. I'm glad to know that you are so much in support of small farmers. And one issue that has been brought up is to have a Department of Agriculture for Maui. Is that something you support? It seems like people do who feel that that would give us a boost. How exactly does that help us? Is that something that attracts funding? What does that do for us?
Right. So yes, I do support the establishment of a Department of Ag at the county level. I think that would help us. So right now, all of the agricultural grants fall under Office of Economic Development. So that's one of the things that the department would do, is to manage that funding that's coming from the county to the farmers. Another thing that the Department of Agriculture would do is help to support our farmers through various policies. So we have an ag working group that has been working really hard, and you know, I really support them, and I'm happy that they're doing all the work that they are doing, and they've been transmitting various proposals for policy changes. And so I think it would be really beneficial for them to have a department to work directly through who has that kind of expertise. If we as a county are saying that food security is our highest priority, then we need to invest in that, and we need to put our money where our mouth is, and truly support our farmers. And I think the State Department of Ag, you know, has what they're working on, and there's so much for us to do to advance the work of farmers that I think the county would be able to, you know, step in and fill in where the State Department of Ag is not.
Thank you, Keani, for your answer. You know, I recently heard this idea I hadn't heard before about a farming co-op where there's actually equipment that can be loaned out. And I think Deb Kaiwi mentioned that idea, and also my neighbor who's an organic farmer mentioned that idea today. So I don't know if you have any further comments on that, but I thought I'd throw that in the mix.
Hello, Sylvia. Yeah, we actually have a couple co-ops on Molokai. We have a farming co-op that has been supported by the Molokai Service Council and Molokai Community Service Council. And they helped to get a USDA grant to purchase different equipment, such as, you know, tractors and backhoes that are really expensive. And they manage the equipment for the farmers to be able to use, you know, when they need it. And yeah, so they would manage all of how that works. So it could be leased for a minimal fee, or it, you know, they could just loan it and just have a list, and, you know, first come, first serve kind of use. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you, Keani.
Tommy, you're next.
Hi there, everybody. Hi, Keani. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the work that you're doing. I've got a couple questions that's related to a couple about Wailuku, but mainly kind of what's kind of the hot topics right now: social injustice, over policing. I saw that Senator Schatz posted yesterday that he's going to work on an amendment to a Weapons Act that will restrict local police departments from obtaining military weaponry for the cheap, as Maui County did with our current Bearcat armored vehicle that our police like to play with. So my question is, what do we, we've seen, with the MOLOKAI protectors, we saw the force that was, luckily they didn't bring it as hard as some of us expected it to, but it's and back down. But that fear is out there. So how are we supposed to be dealing with this right now? We've got, I had court today for breaking curfew. I'm facing $6,000 in citations when both of the citing officers admitted on film that they knew that the media was exempt, but their sergeant told them to do it. So they're following orders. So.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, this is, in my opinion, of course, my personal opinion, the policing on Maui has been out of control. We don't have the accountability. We're one of the only states in Hawaii that doesn't have the officers involved in a killing's names released. They're still currently protected. And so our police are, can kill without their name even being made public. And all of our officers in the state of Hawaii operate under that understanding. So, is there anything we can do? Police reform, would you support police reform? And if so, is it, is a lip service, or is it something that really makes change in America?
Mahalo for that question, Tommy. Okay, so yes, I do support whatever kind of policy reform to help make our police department better for the community, more transparent, but your bigger question really is that going to help? So obviously there's a much bigger thing going on right now across the US. And it's systemic, institutionalized racism. It's a system of oppression, of patriarchy, of classism, and really it's so much bigger than just the police, but it trickles down into law enforcement. And so it is tackling the root of that problem of the system, which is why I ran for office.
With the COVID, we've seen our homeless. I'm not asking about homeless, and my question specifically is the housing first approach to deal and to take care of Maui's homeless community doesn't seem to be supported by our current administration. One, do you support housing first approaches? And two, if so, how can we get the mayor on board for this as well?
Mahalo for your question, honey. Yes, I do support housing first. Again, I think
maybe to clarify, housing first means that they don't have to be sober when they enter the home.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, good. But gives people. Right.
So I think the bigger problem. Okay, so I'm a council member. I can't force the administration to do anything. I can't direct the administration because that would be an impeachable offense. I can create policy, and so what is on the council agenda this Friday that I've proposed is a commission on healing solutions for homelessness, for houselessness. And I think that's looking at houselessness not as a problem, but as a symptom of the problem that I just mentioned. It's the system. And I think part of it requires a shift in our lens, in our thinking about this four walls, the housing that we have, and this Western approach to society. I'm from MOLOKAI, so I have a different background than some other council members. And in summertime, a lot of families would go and camp on the beach for the entire summer. And that was something that the children looked forward to. And living off the land and being Kanaka has been looked down upon and been criminalized. And so I think really thinking outside of the box, when I was in school on Oahu, we removed, so the county did housing first, and they took a woman with 2 children because she was living on the streets. They put her in an apartment, and they took her away from her village, because when you're out on the streets, you make a family. You create a village for yourself for that support system, and that support system is really important. And so when you remove someone from that support system and then you put them into a box and you tell them, okay, now you're going to be successful. It's not looking at the whole picture. It's just saying, like, okay, we're gonna put you here, and hope you can assimilate to the system that we've created. And so I think one of so she would leave the apartment to go back to the family that she created on the streets, because that was her support system.
Right.
She didn't want to be put into this apartment away from her new family. And so I think, I think we just need to really look at the entire picture and stop banging our heads against the wall, because we're not looking at enough creative solutions. Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks for your talk on the Department of Ag and food security and redoing the way funding happens at MEO, the reimbursements. That's huge. That can make, cash flow is like the biggest problem for farmers. It's the money coming later is just not as good for any of the businesses. So right on that. But talk to me a little bit about parking structure and Jonathan and Helen's new love, the middle of town. The new hotel.
Talk to you about the Wailuku parking structure?
Yeah, well, the parking structure, update on the parking structure and the hotel proposal at this point, because that's coming up, right?
Okay. Well, I didn't support the Wailuku parking structure, and I tried to remove the funding for it, and I got outvoted. It almost went through, it was a really proud moment for me. We really trailblazed in that area. No one's ever tried to amend the mayor's CIP budget before, so that was a first. And so we tried to come up with alternative solutions, and we almost succeeded. And unfortunately, I didn't have the votes, and the funding remained in, and I believe it went out to bid, and so it's going to end up being constructed. For the Hotel Wailuku, I don't support the hotel in Wailuku. I also don't support the fact that they have an exemption to not building affordable housing. They have an exemption to the 2.96. Any development that builds 10 or more units are required to build affordable housing, and it has the, in 2.96, inclusionary zoning law requires any developer to build affordable housing, and they've been exempted from that. But overall, I don't think Wailuku needs a hotel. And I also didn't agree that they needed a $40 million parking structure where they planned it.
Yeah. Well, it looks like these projects have a lot of support behind them. So we're going to see our town is really going to change and change in the future. It seems a little reckless thinking of how the economy in the world's changed to keep moving forward with projects like these. Many things have been stalled. It would make sense to just take a deep breath and pause on both of these projects just to see what's taking place. Kanaha Park is still closed. The Kanaha Park also fronts one of Maui's largest unsheltered populations. This is an ohana called the Kanaha Ohana. And I've actually attended 3 of 5 of their community meetings, and they're wonderful. And I just feel like we have real people on the streets right now, and there's all kinds of talk that's taking place, but every night these people are still sleeping unsheltered and they're drinking from a fire hydrant. And it seems that the attention's going elsewhere. And is there anything else? I mean, you talked about some of the unsheltered initiatives. So yeah, I guess I'm doubling back on that, but just appreciate any help on that front for sure.
Absolutely. I have been working closely with the administration on trying to get their basic needs met, which is running water, restrooms, and food. And so we did put some funding into the budget to help with the food. As for the restrooms, and I'll continue to work with the administration to get those needs met.
Yeah, there's a restroom nearby. You just have to unlock it. It's been locked ever since the pandemic hit, against CDC guidelines.
Absolutely.
And the sweeps have been. Oh, here's something. Maybe you can get down to the bottom of who's doing the sweeps. Is it chief of police or is it the mayor's office? Because they're both denying it at this point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I spoke with the managing director because Lisa Darcy reached out to me. And so I reached out to managing director Sandy Baz, and he told me that there was no sweep plan for today and no planned sweep anytime in the future. So
right.
I'm happy to talk with you more.
Yeah, let's talk about this more. There's more to it.
What's going on, and I'm happy to work with you on this.
Thank you.
Okay, Tommy, we're going to move on then with
okay, good.
Daniel next, and then we'll go to Sylvia, and then we'll get back to you, Tommy, again.
Okay, aloha, Keani. Thanks again.
Aloha, Daniel.
Thanks again for coming on. I'm going to start off with my signature question. As a public representative, it is a duty to face the truth and to act righteously. These islands reflect the lowest voter turnout in the United States. On May 15th, 2019, Dr. David Keani gave a presentation to the Maui County Council, evidencing the illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani in 1893 and showing clear violation of domestic and international law with the ongoing illegal United States military occupation of the Kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands. As a candidate for public representation, how do you rectify handling the truth of Dr. Tsai's presentation as well as the works of the Kohawaii Pai'aina office in Hilo, Keamoku Kapu, Henry Noah, Amelia Gora, Pompikana Hele, Leon Su, Dr. Josias, Madame Ruth Bolame, etc. How do you rectify the compliance of the law in restoration of occupied lands?
Mahalo for your question, Daniel. One organization you missed is Kalahui Hawaii. And so the answer is in the question that you asked. Until all the groups that you've named, including Kalahui Hawaii and any other community organization that is working toward an end, can come together and figure out what that direction is, we'll continue to be where we are. And
Okay.
so I support bringing all of the groups together and coming together to figure out what the direction is.
Okay, mahalo.
Daniel, if I could just maybe add to that as a question also to Keani, what will it take for this type of unification of the Hawaiians in this way? And what will it take for that unification also to acknowledge our whole county council process, the importance of the county council and our state representation? In other words, what will it take for them to realize that in order for us to get home rule, we need to have progressives in our seats of office? What would that require?
Mahalo, Paul, for your question. What will it require? It will require a lot more education and a lot more of, you know, as Malcolm X said, you can't mobilize the sleeping people. And for a variety of reasons, the biggest reason is this system that we live in has forced us in a survival mode. And many don't have the luxury of learning more because knowledge is power. And the history of oppression and disenfranchisement and colonization. You know, the first step really is decolonizing your mind. And that's where education comes in. And that's something that I've personally been working hard on with my monthly town halls. I try really hard to be transparent and provide information to our community. I do my town halls every month, well, before the pandemic, in person. I also have them live on social media, and I have Akaku film it because we need to get more people engaged in what's going on, get more people engaged in the government and who's making decisions for them. So that's why I really appreciate this work that you're doing. This is part of education. So mahalo.
I have a question to tag on to that as well. So we had Keani Sai come into Maui County Council. I know he approached other counties as well, yet was unable to. So you were actually in service when Keanu gave that presentation.
Yeah, and the planning land sustainable land use.
So he was able to get in, you know, and there was something different that allowed him to get into Maui County rather than these other counties that knocked it down. And I think what there's a key point there that Paul was getting to regarding what's possible with a progressive county council people in the office actually supporting the people. As the process, as I understand, and perhaps you can clarify, is that Tamara Paulton brought him in and the lead chair accepted. And that process, as I am aware, did not occur on the other islands, in the other counties. You know, is that part of the process of how this works? That the lead chair has to accept?
Oh, so your question is, does the council chair need to approve of someone coming in to do a presentation? No.
Okay, so if that's not the case,
I think the question that you're asking is, if we have leadership decision makers in our legislative body who will advocate on behalf of the people to ensure that more education and transparency and advocates for our community will make decisions on behalf of the community, then yes.
And we had those advocates in Maui County that the other counties obviously didn't have. Otherwise, Keani Sai would have had that presentation done in other counties, it seems.
Absolutely. You have to have that political will. You have to have council members that want change, that want to change the status quo. I mean, it goes back to the system. Those that benefit from the system in place are not going to change the system. So you need leaders, you need elected officials who want to do right by the community.
Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo, Daniel.
Keani, I have a question again about our utilities. Since Maui residents pay the highest electric rate in the nation based on the electric being provided by a private corporation, MECO, and Kauai pays the lowest rate in the nation based on the electric being provided by a community cooperative, what are your thoughts about supporting efforts to change our electric distribution system from a private corporation to a publicly owned and operated cooperative?
Mahalo, Paul, for this question. I was looking forward to this question. Okay, so energy generation is something that I've been working on for the past 4 years. Okay, let's see. Your question is, do I support some type of co-op system? Yes, like Hawaii has. And so Molokai was supposed to have been 100% renewable by 2020. And here we are 2020 and we're not 100% renewable. But we're still working toward that. And so there are several things that are happening. One thing is there's a 30-acre solar farm that's being built, and it'll cover about 25% of Molokai's needs. For energy needs countywide, we're going to need something that is reliable, affordable, and clean. And another thing that Molokai has been working really hard on is community owned, and that's where the co-op comes in. And so we've been following a model in Samso in Denmark. Soren has been coming over to speak with their community on how to make this happen. And so there, about 2 years ago, the legislature passed community-based renewable energies, and Molokai was able to get one of those to work with MECO, and Maui has had 2 applicants to work with MECO. And so that would provide for those that didn't have the capital at the time that it was open to have PV systems on their rooftops. And so the community-based renewable energy program was intended to help those that didn't either rent it, that didn't own their own home, or couldn't afford to put PV on their rooftops. Another thing that we've been looking into are microgrids. So right now we have one central system, and our system is set up in like central Molokai, And as the energy gets to either end of our island, east or west, it loses a lot of energy. And so by having microgrid systems, it'll save a lot of that energy, and it'll benefit the community much greater. One of the things that I want to throw in here is that that we've been working with a company from Okinawa, Thomas Technical Institute, and the community is super excited to get a smokeless incinerator here to deal with our solid waste. And it's taking us, one step closer to be able to turn what's viewed as waste into a resource, so that we can eventually use that as energy, as they do on Oahu with H-Power.
Well, this is wonderful to hear, and really exciting. I think the thing that I'm really psyched about is you're going out and getting all these different experts from around the world, because there's so many systems that are effective and efficient that have been shown and proven to really work extremely well for communities, especially working with microgrids. Hopefully California is starting to move towards that arena also, as they look at all the fires being really started by their transmission lines that are 110 years old in some cases. So again, to see our community be involved with cutting edge like this is very heartening. So thank you for all of these efforts that you're doing on this, Keani.
Absolutely.
With that, then Sylvia, why don't you go next, and then Tommy after that.
All right, thank you, Keani. I'm curious to know your perspective on the Maui injection wells case, especially as a lawyer. Maybe you can shed some light on the process that's ahead of us now. Something tells me the battle is not yet over. And one idea that I've heard circulate is that we could have a community working group with different experts from different fields that would come together to really find the best way to move forward. I realize that this is an issue on other small islands around the world. And yeah, how can we get with the program?
Hello for your question, Sylvia. Yes, I heard that discussion with Robin Knox and Shane, Member Fernandez, last time you had the interview. So the key is reuse. Again, so just like turning our solid waste into a resource, we need to look at water as a resource, which it is. Instead of injecting all of that water, in Lahaina, it's like 4 to 5 million gallons per day. And even if it was cleaned to drinkable standards, fresh water kills coral. So when you have springs, wherever there are springs out near shore, the coral doesn't grow because the coral cannot grow with fresh water. So even if it was the cleanest drinkable water that we're injecting into the injection wells, then that wouldn't do. The key really is reuse. And we invested $14 million into the Lahaina injection well, and another, $7.5 million into the Kihei infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, and for the Kahului wastewater facility as well. So in Kihei, the Department of Environmental Management has been looking at purchasing land where we can reuse that water. And so one of the ideas that I pitched to them, and I'm hoping we can make moves on it. So if we take the wastewater and we put it on, I think it's like 100 acres they're looking at purchasing, and we reuse that water there. And if we were to grow something like construction bamboo or hemp, and we can then use that resource for constructing affordable housing. On Hawaii Island, they have a company that does prefab homes using bamboo, construction bamboo. So they're big and hardy, and so it's something that we can look into because affordable housing or workforce housing is a great need in Maui County as well. So 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. It certainly seems like there are solutions out there if we have the right people voting in that direction. So another thing you mentioned is that you have been watching all of our interviews and studied the questions and answers. And you said you had taken some notes, and now I'm curious what's in your notes. Do you have any like exclamation points or arrows like, oh, I want to talk about this, or I hope they don't ask me that, or what can you give me any highlights from your notes?
Sure, Sylvia.
What were the things that really inspired you or got your mind going?
Well, so there were questions that were asked at every interview, but just like this interview, there are some new questions that wasn't asked prior. And so, one of the questions that Mr. Lester had asked was, what did you accomplish in this first term? And so I have about 5 pages, and I can just like bullet it if you want me to bullet it.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So so we were the first council to approve the directors, the administrative directors, departmental directors, and we made sure to get qualified, transparent directors that would move our county in the right direction. So that was something we made sure to not have those that were not doing a good job. And I chaired the tax reform, so the tax reform temporary investigative group, and we created a tiered tax structure. And moving forward, so we drafted legislation to create a property tax exemption for long-term affordable rentals and long-term rentals. And so that needed a little more work. So as soon as we're finished with the budget, we're going to complete that legislation. So if anyone would like to support that, that will be coming up. So I was I'm the budget chair. Last year, we created a brand new transparent process that was fair to everyone, to every district, and everyone supported that process. And then in this year, we revamped the process just a little bit because we were meeting online. And in our budget sessions, we were the only council to accept live testimony via video and audio. And that was something that was really important for me and for the council to make sure that our community's voices were continued to be heard. And I know the community, in their testimony, they were really grateful for that. But that is our job. We should be doing that. So and in the budget process, I recommended reducing the Maui Visitors Bureau to 0, but I was outvoted. So they're getting 1.5 million, the $2.5 million for the agricultural micro grants to small farmers. And I voted to settle the injection well lawsuit. And we did get the 5 votes for that. Unfortunately, that didn't end up happening the way we voted. I put funding for 2 weed steam machines for pesticide-free weed management for MOLOKAI Maui. And one of the things that was really important to MOLOKAI was getting legislation passed to have a zero cap on STRs. So short-term rentals are no longer allowed to operate on Molokai. And it put a funding for a climate change resiliency plan for starting with Molokai, so we can start small scale, and then we can scale up for the different districts on Maui. And so that was something that was really important to Molokai, because we'll be really affected, impacted by sea level rise, by erosion, by flood inundation. And because we're such a small community, oftentimes we don't, not enough funding will come for us. Okay, and then I did a lot of work for during the pandemic in setting up a website, Keani Rawlins Fernandez.com, and so it has a lot of resources for those that were looking that are in need, so small business grants. It also had it has all the information on budgets, on the budget. So if you, it has it all in one place. So it's very convenient for anyone that wants to learn more about the budget. KeaniRawlinsFernandez.com, and there's a budget tab, and it has the budget document with the all the amendments that the council made from the document that we received from the mayor. And it has all the revenues broken out, and I kind of explain how to read it because I know the budget bill is kind of complex. Okay, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Keani.
Okay, Tommy, if you would like to go next.
Hi, Keani. I just have one more question. The cries to reopen are going to get louder. Mm-hmm. And I know you're working hard on all of the ways to secure our world for our people here in the islands in many ways. At the same time, the cries to reopen are going to get louder and louder and louder. It's going to increase day by day by day, risking, our health security. How do we safely reopen?
How do we safely reopen? Okay, so in our EACP committee meeting today, we discussed that, and we're going to continue to discuss that. But Dr. Scott Miskovich and from the Premier Health Group on Oahu, that's been leading the charge in drive-through testing, and Department of Health, Dr. Pang, both recommended that the safe way of reopening is by having testing done 2 to 3 days before any traveler leaves where they are, whether they're home, so where they're going to be departing from. So they would test 2 to 3 days prior, and then they would test again after they get here. And the test would be a rapid test so that they would get the results right away, and highly accurate, so a 95% accuracy rate. And then, so they would test before they come, and then they would test again after they arrive.
So that's the plan. Test them and let's do it. Okay. Well, it's going to happen. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
So we have time for just one more question. Daniel, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, just a tag on with the pandemic questions. So we're looking at opening up, and a big piece of this puzzle is also the economic recovery. So what are some strategies for economic recovery? And you're in the budget, so I'm sure you got some interesting insights into that. So what can you share with us?
Mahalo for that question, Diane. Okay, so obviously the economic recovery plan that you've been hearing from everyone is we need to diversify. So this budget, we invested, as I mentioned, a lot of funding. So more than just that 2.5 million, close to like over $4 million in agriculture. and we invested funding into technology and other industries so that we're able to build up, have different options and not rely so much on the tourism industry. With the COVID funding that we received, right now, $66.6 million from the CARES Act, the council has been advocating for retraining. And I think the administration is on board. So we'll be using a lot of that funding to help those that were in the tourism industry, because as Tommy pointed out, tourists are going to start coming back, but we're not going to be at 80% occupancy rate for all the hotels. And from what I'm hearing from the community, that's not the direction that we want to go in anyway. That we do need to do a much better job at managing the tourism industry. And so that's something that I've been working hard on with my team to prepare for, the floodgates.
Right, because we had an overwhelming flood of tourism before all of this, and so with the diversifying, we have money going into ag. Is that part of the 2.5 million of the micro grants to the farmers?
Yes.
And is that including small farmers, or is that more geared towards like who's actually getting part of that pot?
So the 2.5 micro grant funding is for small farmers who are farming for business. So it wouldn't be your backyard gardens. It's farming businesses, because we're pushing toward food security. We do have funding for new farmers under the Farm Apprentice Program. With HFUU, we gave funding to the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We also gave funding to similar like farmer apprentice program in West Maui. So land, capital are two barriers to achieving food independence and food security. And another is growing farmers. We need to, I can't remember who said it in their question, but we need to make farming more like sustainable for people, to be able to rely on farming as their, for income.
So with that, would you, because you agreed on that having a Maui County Department of Ag would be helpful. Is this sort of a part of our immediate plan of getting some recovery going? Like some things need to be implemented like immediately in order to get this sustainability ongoing. We got 66 million going to the CARES Act. Could that be going? Is that training for farmers as well, or is that strictly in the 4 million for the ag block?
Okay, so the $66.6 million is federal funding from the CARES Act, and so
is that accessible? Daniel? Is that accessible as well to ag, or so that's different? You're saying the 4 million of the ag from Maui County, and then the 66 million is just all that rest of it that we can tap into.
Federal funding.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. So we have our county funding, and that was $816 million in our budget, and that budget is mostly generated from property taxes, user fees, so just county generated funding, and then the $66.6 million is part of the, $2.1 billion that the state got. And so $66.6 million is part of the coronavirus relief fund that the Maui County received. And so in that fund, there is funding, so separate funding for farmers. In the emergency fund that we passed 2 months ago, I think now, sorry, time has escaped me. We provided $4 million in emergency funding from the emergency fund, the county emergency fund. And the administration did provide funding to the Hawaii Farm Bureau and the HFUU, Hawaii Farm Union, Farmers
Gotcha.
Union.
So there's some things underway with Maui County to get that food sustainability like on point. Okay. All right, mahalo. I'm going to pass it on to you, Paul.
So Keani, just another question then about our budget. With the $66 million plus from the CARES Act, is that totally controlled by the mayor's office and the administration there, or does the county council have much say? And if that's the case, what can we do as citizens to help direct that $66 million to where we see it needs instead of maybe Mayor Victorino seeing where it goes?
Awesome question. Mahalo for that question, Paul. So as the Economic Development and Budget Committee Chair, I have scheduled the any kind of coronavirus funds that the county is receiving in every committee. And so my committee meets, so the Budget Committee meets on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. And you can come and testify. It's always open to anyone that wants to come and testify. You can go to mauicounty.us/agendas to get the agenda, and then you'll have the link, and and it'll be the same link every time. So you click on the link, and it's like Zoom. It's Blue Jeans software, so it's a video software, and you can look at past meetings and any of the attachments. And I'm gonna work on having a spreadsheet that will be easier for the community to be able to review to see where that funding is going. And so in the Senate Bill 75, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, it stipulates that the administration must consult with the council. And so the administration has been working with the council to determine where that $66.6 million plus. So there's also $7.8 million that went to the Department of Transportation. There's funding that's going into the Department of Housing and Human Concerns. So there's all these different fundings. There's $2 million that went to the HELP program, which is funding that can go to families that are in need. And so I believe right now it's up to $800 a month to show that you've been financially impacted by this pandemic. And so, let's see who is NEO has been managing that program, the HELP program. So anyone that's in financial need can go and apply for additional funding there. But to answer your question, yes, there is a consultation clause in the state bill that passed. So the administration is required, but they have been willingly collaborating with the council to make sure that that funding is going where the community is asking. So the community will then have an opportunity to provide their input directly by coming to the budget committee meeting. So it's EDB meeting Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, and you can testify there to have your voice heard on where you would like that $66.6 million to be directed.
Thank you, Keani, for that. And I'm so appreciative of having our governance be more and more transparent and enable really our community to participate in this way. And it really is convenient having these Zoom conference calls instead of going all the way in to testify in the county council chambers. It does make it so much more convenient and easy for all of us, just as these interviews that we're doing right now, and having that information go out to our community, and it can be accessed throughout the election cycle. So I think that this technology that we're engaging really is enlightening in many ways, and I think will really support our democracy in a profound way. So as an ending, Keani, if you would like to just talk a little bit about how people can get more information about you and your campaign, and also if they would like to also support you financially, how they can go about doing that.
Mahalo, Paul, for this final question, I would like to, Sylvia had asked what other notes had I taken. And I took some notes for Bruce. And so Bruce always asks if I support district voting using the Senate districts, and I do. And we can continue to protect the Molokai seat and the Lanai seat by just having those residency requirements within the Senate districts. And so for you, Bruce, yes. And he also asked about term limits, if I support removing the word consecutive, and I do. And I think, so those were the two main questions that I wanted to make sure to answer since Bruce is in here. Okay, and, oh, I'm sorry, Paul?
No, thank you for that. That's great. And yes, Bruce is here in spirit for sure. So please just give us a little bit more information how people can get more information from your contacts and support you financially also.
Mahalo. Okay, so you can go to my website at votekeani.com. That's my campaign website. And it has more information about me, about what I'm doing, and I'll share that in the comments after, so if anyone wants to click on that. And but if you want to learn more about the budget and COVID resources and other resources, you can go to KeaniRawlinsFernandez.com for that information, and I can also share that link in the comments after we conclude here. But yeah, so I would appreciate any contribution. No contribution is too small. I'll be participating in the state matching funds again. So your $20 donation will then be a $40 donation. So whatever amount you're able to donate during this time, is appreciated. Mahalo. So votekeani.com /support.